What is up? My name is Gaijin Greg, and welcome to my 1-year update video. That is right. As of today, as of recording, we are at day 367 in a row of studying Japanese using an immersion or input-based approach, however you want to call it. If you did miss my previous 2 update videos, I got links down in the description below, and those should give you some pretty good context of my journey up until the 6-month mark. If you do like the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon. We're going to have another update video at 18 months, but beyond that, I've got some other content ideas cooking for you guys. Let's get right into the stats. We've got 767 hours total, which adds up to just over 2 hours and 5 minutes a day, which is above my 2-hour-a-day goal. For listening, we've got 487 hours, or 63% of my time. Vocabulary is 189 hours, a little bit over 25% of my time. Grammar study, we've got 55 hours, which is a little bit over 7% of my time. And for reading, we've got 35 hours, which is just below 5% of my time. So I feel really good about keeping up with the 2 hours a day consistently. At this point, it really has just become a routine and it feels normal. I feel like it's a super sustainable amount of time for me, and I'm still making tangible gains and progress. Let's talk about what I've been using for input material briefly before I give you my thoughts on my progress and how the journey's been going so far. For listening, let's break it down into podcasts first. I've been getting a little bit more into the podcast again lately. I've been using, as usual, Nihongo con Teppei and Learn Japanese with Noriko whenever new episodes come out, because I'm caught up on those. And I guess my go-tos have been Japanese with Shun and Miku Real Japanese. So really been enjoying those podcasts. As far as anime is concerned, what I've watched in the past 6 months, I've watched Kemono Friends, which was kind of a more children's TV show. I watched Karakai Jouzu no Takagi-san, or Teasing Master Takagi. Really love that one. I highly recommend that to anybody. As far as some other things that I've been watching anime-wise, I've watched Watashi no Shiawase na Kekkon, or My Happy Marriage on Netflix. I didn't really take myself to be a shoujo type of guy, but I really enjoyed it. Usagi Drop, and finally Naruto. I had to rep it for the video today. I've always loved Naruto, and it's been a very interesting experience coming back and watching it in Japanese with no sub, so that's been fun. As far as some non-anime stuff that I've watched Switched on Netflix, and that's kind of like a drama, and that was my first one. I've watched Alice in Borderland, which by far, hands down, is my favorite thing that I've watched in these past 6 months. It's fantastic, and I believe season 3 is coming out soon, so I'm very excited for that. I also really enjoy watching just various YouTube channels and travel vlogs. I like to see kind of people visit various locations in Japan or the countryside, and kind of seeing a native's take on it is very fascinating. Other stuff I've been watching, Shinya Shokudo, or Midnight Diner. I really love that show. I think it's hilarious, and I don't think it's trying to be in many parts, so I really enjoy that. And Terrace House Opening New Doors, I did finish kind of earlier on in this time frame as well. I got some exciting news for you guys because I have finally started reading in earnest, and we'll go over kind of what I did read in these past 6 months. And most of this reading did take place in the latter half, so the last couple of months, but I actually got this book for Christmas, and Japanese Stories for Language Learners. My parents got me it for Christmas because they know I've been studying, so thanks, Mom and Dad. And it's been very fascinating. There's a lot of different short stories in these. And a lot of them, I believe, are kind of like classic Japanese short stories. So the 3 that I've read in this book so far are Urashima Taro, Yuki-onna, and Kumo no Ito. And all of those have been pretty good. I will say Kumo no Ito was definitely kind of tricky. There was kind of a lot of like formal, like reverential language because the Buddha was in the story, so that was a little confusing. But other than that, I've been also reading Majo no Takyubin, or Kiki's Delivery Service, and I've really been enjoying that. And I tried to read a little bit of manga. I tried to read K-On! Manga, but for now it's mostly on the side, just occasionally here or there, and then also keeping my, I guess, regular dose of NHK news easy when I kind of need a little bit of reading in a pinch. I won't go over the vocab in super detail because it's exactly the same as the last video. I will throw on here that I'm pretty sure I'm about ready just to throw out the recognition, remembering the kanji deck. I just don't think it's that useful, and I think I'm going to learn most of this stuff through vocab as far as like the actual individual kanjis. I think from what I've been feeling, I'm naturally kind of acquiring what the meanings and different pronunciations of those are. And then for grammar, I think I just finished the other day the Japanese Amo with Misa's beginner playlist, so was taking notes all the way through those. I feel like it definitely jump-started my kind of comprehension of Japanese a lot, and I'm really happy I took the time to do that. But let's get into now my thoughts on the journey so far and what's been going on in my head, and it's going to be a little all over the place, so just bear with me, guys. So in general, I do feel like Japanese is starting to feel much less random, and what I kind of mean by that is when I first started learning through Tai Kim, everything from the grammar rules to the vocabulary was incredibly confusing, and it seems like as I go on, a lot more grammar points are less confusing, and even if I don't understand something, which is pretty often, I don't think it's nonsensical. Like, it just feels like there's a little bit more of a method to the madness at this point. I will say one of the big things that has been hanging me up, especially kind of around the 6-month mark to the 9-month mark, like hiragana and subtitles were very tricky for me, and the written language is just a lot different than the spoken language a lot of times from when I'm watching shows. And it feels like there's a lot of like extraneous information or tag-ons at the end of the sentence in spoken language, and I know a lot of times these do have like subtle meanings and they are important, and sometimes they're actually like grammar point conjugations. It's just that I wasn't and still not super familiar with everything, so I'm trying not to get too bogged down and like too confused, and you know, just keep learning the best I can. Kansai Ben has really been messing with me for some reason, and this is the Kansai dialect for those of you who don't know. For some reason, it is just super hard for me to put 2 and 2 together. Like, it just throws me for a loop whenever a Kansai Ben speaker shows up. But I'm hoping with more and more exposure to it, and the more it shows up in media, I will kind of get used to it, and it won't throw me for a loop as much. As always, the battle between comprehensible input and enjoyment has been tricky, but my kind of solution has been to have multiple shows going at a time to get a little bit of both. As far as kind of like the day-to-day grind, some days, you know, it just feels like I'm going through the motions and I can't keep my mind from wandering, but I feel like it's important to do this, even if you don't have a high motivation day. Like, it is completely unrealistic to show up every single day of your life to do something and be extremely excited and enthused to do so. So sticking to my 2 hours and getting something out of it is better than doing nothing and getting nothing out of it. Just need to be a little more forgiving of myself, I think, probably when these days happen, and I think I can also try to plan when I study within a day to get the most out of my limited brain power or resources for a particular day. So I've noticed, I think, that 30-minute chunk seems to be a lot more manageable than like doing the whole 2 hours at once, but there is some efficiencies probably that I lose because it does take a while to get my brain into Japanese mode. So I took this note at about the 7-month mark of my journey. I want to read it for you guys. I'm wondering if it will ever get easier soon, or if I'm just going to get used to doing hard things. I know people talk that it just eventually becomes doing something you enjoy, but in your target language. I feel like I'm close, but maybe not at that level of comprehension yet. And I can tell you that after getting to this point at the 1-year mark, I already feel so much better about this. Like, don't get me wrong, it is very hard trying to learn another language still, but it is gradually getting easier. And I am enjoying myself more and enjoying the content more for what it is. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. and it's close to becoming just spending time with the language. I felt the saying, I have so much more to learn, in a good way lately, rather than previously where it felt like bad or almost daunting. Nevertheless, I still do have feelings often, like wondering if it's all worth it. And don't get me wrong, I'm still super excited and passionate about learning Japanese, and I just find language learning in general to be so fascinating. I guess it's just more of like I've been grounded a little bit lately and kind of reminded that not everybody is super into learning languages, and a lot of people just don't care and flat out think it's pointless. You know, I'm not sure if it's a Midwest America thing or if it's like an Anglophone thing, but maybe the reason I've been feeling grounded lately is just because I've had people think I'm crazy for trying to self-learn a language through input. Like, I think a lot of people just look at me in disbelief that I'm not taking a class or not using a textbook. And I'm sure that my wife is sick of having me talk her ear off about language learning and how the journey is going. But she did start her Spanish learning or relearning journey about 100 days ago, and that's been so much fun to kind of talk through this shared experience with her now. And it's also why it's so nice to have all of you guys down in the comments below sharing your language learning experiences, advice, and stories. So leave me a comment down below, don't forget. So one of my goals from last time was to start doing more intensive immersion, especially listening, which to be honest was really hard at first, but I did do it. The first time I did it was with the J-drama switch that I alluded to earlier, and I think the biggest problem was like figuring out how to use a grammar reference is actually like way less straightforward than it seems. Like the actual skill of like learning how to look things up in the grammar reference is like definitely something that takes practice, and it takes a while to figure out how to look up something that you don't know. And this is especially true in like the spoken language or slang or something that's just different than textbook grammar. And kind of going back for a second to what I was talking about before with the language feeling much more logical than before. And I know a language isn't really a logical thing, and I do feel like my fairly limited grammar priming has helped me kind of wrap my head around Japanese though, and maybe it's just the immersion making things make sense slowly though. I'm not really sure, but you know, like I said originally, everything almost felt opposite to English and my English instincts, and I don't really feel that anymore. And even though there's a ton I don't understand, it doesn't feel nonsensical outside of, you know, maybe just a few things. But maybe I'm in for a rude awakening, and I've got it coming for me. But I feel like I'm really kind of starting to disagree with Refold's general approach to grammar study. You know, they don't really recommend dedicated grammar study. But I feel like it's particularly important for a language as far away from English as Japanese. Like, maybe if I was learning a romance language, like this approach would work better. But I think, you know, that extra context from grammar priming is so important when, you know, it's nothing like English. And even learning a single important grammar point or conjugation type can massively boost the amount of stuff I can comprehend. This is especially true when there's like resources on YouTube that are kind of focused on more casual or informal speech. A resource that I have been actually using a little bit lately is ChatGPT, and it's been pretty useful to find like content. You can put in some prompts and it will recommend like content for upper beginner, lower intermediates, you know, using an immersion based approach, and it will give you some good recommendations for whichever kind of input source you would like, whether that's reading, whether that's light novels, manga, anime, dramas. Like, it will give you resources for everything. So I think that's actually pretty cool, and there's probably some other ways I could implement it in the learning process, but I don't want to get too bogged down in technology and like trying to optimize things. And I got a little rant later, so wait for that. But I really do think there's nothing better than finding a show that you're super excited about and really into. This year, you know, Alice in Borderland really was that show for me. Like, I was so excited. I had to find the next thing out. Like, I just could not stop watching it. And like, intensive immersion with that was great because it was certainly above my level, but I was able to intensively immerse in it and break down every sentence and make sure I understood the whole story. So like I mentioned before, I put this highest on my recommendation list if you are doing some intensive immersion. One thing that I find really interesting is, like, as intimidated as I was early on by kanji and like how scary they are, like I now almost wish only kanji was used and like as little hiragana was used as possible, because like to me that's the confusing part now. And like I think with time it's gonna get less annoying, but like even sometimes the hiragana words can like make your pop-up dictionary less functional or efficient, so that's a little frustrating, but I think it'll get better like the better I get. As far as sentence mining is concerned, like I think it would be super helpful in my progress, but I'm like afraid to do it right now, especially while I've still got the core 2K 6K deck that I'm running. I'm probably gonna need to find a rhythm and routine for that, and so it is my kind of biggest goal going into year 2 is really get a workflow down and get going on that. I don't have a concrete goal of cards mined per day as of now, since I still have quite a bit of time in the core 2K 6K deck, but because of that grace period, I think I do have a chance to find my groove before that time comes. So I think sentence mining is also gonna, really help me find a balance between intensive and free flow immersion. Speaking of free flow versus intensive immersion, I've been thinking a lot about the value of both and trying to determine what works best for me. Some days it's like one immersion form may be significantly better than the other just for that day. And most of the time when I do full-on intensive immerse a show episode, I'll come back and free flow that episode a day later. That helps me kind of get both in still. But in general, I would say I'm still mostly a free flow type of guy when it comes to listening. I think, reading obviously as an immersion activity is almost inherently active, and I have been getting more into that. So I think it's important to get both forms of input, and I'm challenging myself with the language and in lots of different ways. So I want to continue to do that. And speaking of reading, the last 2 months in particular, I've had the opportunity to read content a lot more. I did do some graded readers here and there, but most of my time was with native content, and let me tell you guys, it was very, very painful the first couple of times I tried to read a novel or short story. I mean, I had to stop darn near every sentence to look up words or grammar points, and I was chugging along so slowly. It was so painful that truthfully I really didn't want to read at all, but I kept bringing myself back because I knew it was important, and I knew that, I needed to do it. And one day I decided to, right after waking up, read on a weekend, so I was well rested and had plenty of sleep, and the difference was astounding. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, I do not understand it to this day, but it was just a turning point for me, and I just got into this groove, and that day I read for an hour and a half straight, and it felt like 5 minutes. Like, I even experienced like images in my head while reading, similar to how I would in English. And it still isn't easy per se, but reading really became an enjoyable experience for me that continues on to this day. I just have to make sure I have adequate sleep so I can focus or I don't get drowsy, and I think this is like an especially rewarding accomplishment for me because like I am not a huge fan of reading even in English, so like finding the joy and like fun in that in Japanese is just a huge win. And I believe a major contributor to the initial difficulty of reading was the fact that it's surprisingly hard to get into or effectively do with the resources that are available in America. Like the methods you need to go through and the hoops you need to jump through is just way too annoying to get started with. And because of that, I ended up deciding to get a Kindle, as you can see here. And seriously, I believe this is the #1 resource for language learning as a Japanese learner if you're a big reader. And the reason it's so good is because it makes lookups incredibly simple. There's a pop-up dictionary that you can use. It's easy and portable, and you can take it anywhere. And when you're using a Japanese Amazon account, it really just gives you access to an essentially unlimited library of native content. Like, I cannot stress enough, guys, like, a Kindle is the best investment you can make as a Japanese learner, especially if you love reading and especially if you're at a phase where you need to do a lot of lookups. And as I mentioned before, I did end up finishing the Japanese Amma with Misa Beginner Grammar series, and I still think I'm going to watch Kiradali as planned, but I'm going to speed run those grammar lessons, and probably at the same time I'm going to add a Anki grammar deck just to keep a lot of these concepts in my mind while I encounter them during immersion. And I just want to clarify, I'm not going to be drilling grammar or drilling forming sentences, but just practicing recognizing the different grammar patterns and points. I don't think I'm ready for the monolingual transition just yet, and for those of you who don't know what this is essentially when you stop using English to Japanese definitions and you only use Japanese definitions of Japanese words. At this point, I don't think I'm ready. It's probably at least another 6 months out, and maybe I'll never truly feel ready and I just gotta send it, but I'll evaluate and kind of see how I feel after I finish the core 2K, 6K vocabulary deck and kind of test run it a bit. With regards to speaking, I still feel like I'm quite a ways out, at least a year, year and a half, 2 years. Like, I really want to keep hitting this immersion hard. And I really want to get, a couple thousand hours in total under my belt. And I think then it would probably be a good time to start practicing speech and output. I also think I might start digging a bit into some pitch accent stuff so I can hopefully recognize it a bit better as I'm immersing in content. I did do the Matt versus Japan, pitch accent recognition deck, but I'm thinking a little bit about Dogen's courses online. I've heard some good things about those, so if anybody has heard anything, definitely let me know in the comment section below about kind of pitch accent stuff. And one thing I want to talk about is kind of subs versus no subs, and I've been doing a lot of pure listening the last couple of months, and it really has been astounding to notice the large gap in comprehension when you don't have subtitles to help you that you are reading below. And I'm of course referring to Japanese subtitles underneath. Naruto I've been watching without subtitles, and I'm about 90 episodes in at this point, and as I've watched more, I feel like I am getting better at it, but it is still definitely a struggle, and it's definitely a trained skill, and you don't realize how hard it is till you take the training wheels off. But I promised you guys a rant, and I do have somewhat of a hot take when it comes to immersion learning and the community in general, and this is just my opinion, so don't flame me, but I just get the feeling from being on the internet, social media, and Discord servers that there's just a lot of learners who are maybe overthinking the whole language learning process too much when it comes to technology and how technology can aid you. Yes, we do have a lot of resources at our disposal in 2024 to help us out, but at the end of the day, what's going to make the difference is you putting the time in and grinding things out and figuring out what works best for you. I just often see a lot of people spending their time and mental energy trying to optimize their routine or perfect their immersion setups with tools and aids, and it could totally be that I'm not being super efficient and I'm missing out on these gains. And maybe I should be spending more time thinking about these types of things to increase my rate of improvement. But I don't really know, guys. To me, I feel like the saying, just immerse, bro, really holds true here. And I know that is not the context and how it's usually applied, but I feel like it applies to a lot of people's desire for the perfect setup or the optimized learning schedule. You're going to have to find these things out over time for yourself and just continuously improve your process, little by little. You can't get everything right the first time. I don't know, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole here, so let's get into my goals for the next 6-month period. Goal number 1, I'm going to sentence mine, and I'm going to get a workflow going for when I'm finished with the core 2K, 6K deck. I'm going to continue to read and try to find things that I enjoy reading. And number 3, I'm going to invest a little time into the pitch accent. I think even though I'm not going to be outputting anytime soon or speaking, I think it will be very useful down the road, and hopefully will have, you know, the impact of making me sound more natural when I do speak, because I can hear the pitch of the language. And number 4 is going to be to continue to prioritize my health and fitness. I know it was something I mentioned in the 6-month update video that I felt like maybe I was sacrificing my health a little bit for this hobby. And, you know, at the end of the day, it is a hobby. It is a hobby I care about. But, you know, I need to be a healthy individual. And I think being a healthy individual is going to help me be better at learning languages. So continuing to find ways to implement my language learning into a healthy lifestyle, whether that's listening to a podcast on a walk outside or doing my vocab on a morning walk instead of sitting down at the computer, whether that's going to the gym and listening to a podcast in the car. I mean, there's just so many ways that I can implement these 2 hobbies or priorities together, and I need to continue to do so. So, like I said, the next update video is going to be at 18 months, but I do have some potential ideas for some other content, so make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon to get notified the next time that I upload. I want to know what you guys think now, though. What is your favorite type of input material? Do you prefer active or free flow immersion? And what is the favorite piece of content that you've consumed in your target language so far? Let me know the answer to all those questions down in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one.